Hey guys, check it out. I am here in the brand new 2020 Volkswagen Atlas Cross Sport, and VW flew me here to lovely British Columbia, just north of Vancouver, on my way to Whistler to test drive this new sporty crossover. So let's get right to it. First, I'm going to drive up to this beautiful spot, and we're going to park the car, and then we're going to do a walk around, and that's of course the little snowflake telling me that it's getting colder because we're getting closer to Whistler. We'll do a walk around, we'll go under the hood, I'll talk to you about how it feels to sit in the vehicle, we'll talk about how much room there is in the back, and then of course at the end of this review I'm going to tell you whether you should buy it, lease it, rent it, or forget it. So thanks for joining me for this first drive review, and let's get right to it. But before that, let's park the car, and you guys got to take a look at how beautiful it is around here. It is absolutely astounding. So let's start with what's under the hood. Isn't that gorgeous? I mean, really, it doesn't get more beautiful than that, especially over there. Look, you can see the snow-capped mountains. Such a beautiful part of the world here north of Vancouver, and an interesting car. If you guys are familiar with the Atlas, you'll be familiar with this Volkswagen, because basically it's an Atlas that's been, in Volkswagen's term, sport crossified. What does that mean? Well, that means that instead of 3 rows, you now get 2 rows. And follow me back here, instead of kind of that squared off back, you get this much more, I'm using air quotes here, coupe-like back, giving it a much more coupe-like, sporty, athletic, use the adjective you want, sexy appearance. And I gotta tell you, I like the back of the vehicle. It really reminds me a little bit of a Urus, or is it Urus, which is of course part of the Volkswagen brand as well. And in this Pacific blue, the car is actually incredibly sexy. But what you're missing here, of course, is that third row of seating. So now this car competes with vehicles like the Ford Edge, the Honda Pilot, and believe it or not, the Jeep Grand Cherokee. Now this, of course, is the 2-liter turbo. There are 2 engine choices. There's also a V6. So let's look under the hood, and we'll talk about what you get with the 2.0T. You, of course, get a 4-cylinder Volkswagen designed, tested, and approved TSI 2-liter. And if you're familiar with any of the Volkswagen 2-liters, you'll be familiar with this engine. Now, in this form, it puts out about 235 horsepower, 258 pound-foot of torque. It is paired to an 8-speed automatic transmission, and it's pretty perky. I mean, it drives well. You know, it's not going to win any drag strip races, but let's face it, this is not the car that you're going to take to the drag strip anyway. But I'm a big fan of Volkswagen 2-liters, and even in a big old vehicle like this, it does really well. And if you look at the fascia, Volkswagen calls this the 3-bar grille. It's very reminiscent of the brand new 2020 Atlas. So now there's, of course, a very strong family resemblance. And that's, of course, because they're built on basically the same line in the same factory in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And in terms of wheel size, we've got snow tires on this guy because we're going to be going into the snow, but you can get them from 18 all the way to 21-inch wheels and tires, depending on what trim level. And this 4-cylinder will start at about 30K. Our particular tester is 42K, and if you get all the bells and whistles, you can get up to about 48K. The V6 starts at about 37 and goes up to about 50K. So Matt, my videographer, why don't you hop into the passenger seat? I will hop into the driver's seat, and let's talk about what you get on the inside. Now, once again, since this is basically an Atlas with a missing third row, you'll note that it's very similar. And what I like about this car is that it's ergonomically very driver-centric. So, you know, everything is where it should be, because when you're cruising down the Autobahn at, well, in this case, at top speed of 260 kilometers, or about, what is that, about 150 miles an hour, if it will actually go that fast, you don't want to be fiddling for a volume knob that's not there. I also like the fact that they didn't reinvent the transmission. We got a good old standard P, R, and D, and basically cup holders and kind of everything where it should be. Now, if you look over here, you'll note that we do have different drive modes. Mostly, these are electronically controlled stability algorithms that basically control where the power is sent. So you've got a snow mode, a highway mode, and a little mountain mode, which kind of brings to mind the fact that this does compete with the Grand Cherokee. So you may be wondering, is this an off-roader? And the answer is, to really be an off-roader, you need to have good approach, departure, breakover angle. You probably want more than just a standard all-wheel drive. You want lockable diffs. You probably also want things like disconnectable sway bars, none of which this has. So yeah, it's a good vehicle to take on a dirt road or in the snow. If you're going to go bashing boulders in Moab, I would say do so at your own risk. Now, it's an interesting mix of kind of expensive materials and a little bit of cost cutting. So everything I touch, like the steering wheel, like over here where you see this really intricate, well, relatively intricate stitching, over here where you have kind of soft elephant skin plastic, and over here where you've got this leather, or is it leatherette? It comes in both, and I can't really tell the difference with Volkswagen. Upholstery, it's nice, but then over here, oh my, I mean, that is not exactly the height of haute couture. Did I say that right? It's basically just relatively inexpensive plastic and cost cutting. You do get your tech, of course. There are 2 USB ports down here that you can plug in your phone and use all your modern conveniences. And of course, I think you get what looks like to me about an 8-inch screen. I can actually start this car up and you can see it come to life. And of course, you also get a configurable LCD display in the center, which is very much akin to what you might see in an Audi. So once again, part of the Volkswagen Group family, so that makes sense. Overall, this is sharp. Let's check out the rear backup camera. Let's see how sharp that is. Is that a potato cam? It's hard to tell until it gets dark. When it gets all pixelated at night, that's when you can really tell. But even in the backup cam, you can just tell how beautiful it is here. The other thing you get with this car, of course, is a full list of safety features. So, we're on our way to autonomy. Things like lane keep, like blind spot monitoring, autonomous or semi-autonomous braking. Not quite up to kind of Tesla levels of autopilot, but nevertheless slowly getting there. All the manufacturers are kind of working their way up to full autonomy. Now, I think my favorite thing about this vehicle is it's big. And you always make fun of me in the comments because I always say I'm a big guy, and I think I feel self-conscious about that. But as a big guy, I feel super comfortable in here. I love a car where I don't have to put the seat all the way back to get comfortable. I love a car where there's plenty of shoulder room, where I don't feel like I'm, cozying up to the passenger. And I love the car that has plenty of headroom, even with this magnificent, I should say, sunroof, because look at that thing. It is absolutely incredibly big. So let's see what that means when we get in the back row, and then when we open up the hatch to show you just how much room there is. So let's hop in the next row and talk about the size. So we are going skiing, so you'll note that it has a 40-60 split that we are using quite effectively to use as ski storage. And let me sit behind the passenger and look at this. I mean, I have so much room back here. I could actually do whatever that is, and have plenty of room to do it. I have plenty of headroom, and for a coupe, you'd think that back here you'd lose a little bit of headroom. You do lose a little bit, but not that much. It's actually really, really good. I'm hitting a little bit, but it's comfy. And then if we open up the back, since we did lose that third row in the Atlas, and of course it still says Atlas, because it is the sporty version of the Atlas. Look at that. I mean, holy cannoli, that is a lot of room back there. Probably more room than even I would ever need. So if you are space challenged in your current vehicle, this is certainly a good option for you. Now, you may be wondering, when is this vehicle going to become available? And that answer is any day now. We're at the end of February, and Volkswagen says that sometime maybe by beginning of March it should be hitting dealerships. And in terms of colors, if you pan over there, you'll see a tan one. But to me, this Pacific Blue is very handsome. So if you guys are looking for a vehicle that has that German design language, and what I mean by that is kind of squared off, square jawed, very functional, one that is built in America, and one that costs, let's say, between $30,000 and $40,000, this may be a vehicle for you. On the TFL scale of buy it, lease it, rent it, or forget it, after having spent about an hour and a half driving it, I'm going to give it a lease it at this point. I'd like to spend a little bit more time behind the wheel. I'd actually like to take it off-road and see how it does before I can give it that full-on buy it. But for somebody who is into very big vehicles, this is a very big crossover. Guys, thanks for watching. Remember, check out tflcar.com for more news, views, and of course, real-world Volkswagen on-road reviews. See you guys next time. Ciao.